Welcome to the Really 007 podcast for this special interview with none other than Mr. Anthony Starke, best known to Bond fans, of course, for playing Truman-Lodge in License to Kill. And you can find us and listen to us on iTunes and Spotify, and we're on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So, with me tonight are my good men, John Kell and Rob Parker, who I'm sure have got plenty to ask Anthony. This will be our first transatlantic broadcast, of course, as Anthony is joining us from sunny LA, I believe. So
I'm trans all of a sudden, and I didn't even know.
Freudian slip.
What a way to announce it, Anthony. What a way.
It's a late discovery, mate. It's a late discovery.
And he's got a good British accent as well. So yes, Mr. Anthony Starke, of course, he has appeared in what we regard as the finest Bond film. We did vote it as the number one in our list. He's also made countless appearances on stage, film and TV. I was just looking at your CV, Anthony, of course, doing my research for this episode. And I've noticed it's not everybody does it?
No.
Some people in England don't.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I did a podcast a couple of months ago, and I was carrying this guy on my back like a Sherpa. I felt like I was climbing K2. He had like 3 questions. I managed to do 46 minutes. So go ahead, you're fine.
So anytime you want to take over hosting, that's completely fine.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah. Well, I was just saying, some of the people you've worked with in your career, absolutely outstanding. It's Tom Hanks, I've got here. Leslie Nielsen, of course, in Repossessed. Heather Graham, Paul Sorvino, George Clooney, and I have to say this, Rob's favourite action star of all time, Mr. Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yes. I did a movie with him called Nowhere to Run, where I played this kind of dim-witted guy from Montana who breaks him out of a prison bus, and we have a brief fight scene, and then I get shot in the neck and die. You know?
You're in that movie. You steal that movie.
Oh well,
yeah. You steal the entire movie.
As a silhouetted corpse on his shoulder as he's getting ready to bury me. I was compelling. But he was an interesting dude. You know, he was fun to work with. You know, it's just like he just one time said to me, "Oh, Tony, you're a very good actor," and I thought, I don't know how to take that, but thank you. You know, so. But yeah, he was fun. Nice guy, and you know, I will say this: I'm a lifelong martial artist myself, and the guy is a phenomenal athlete. He takes a lot of guff from people, but not many people can move like that.
Really?
Absolutely.
I'm on another podcast as well, Anthony, and we talk often about JCVD because his growing up with there's a gamut of films I grew up with. You know, License to Kill is in that bracket, Die Hard's in there as well, but the early 90s JCVD stuff, like, you know. So when I saw that you were in 2 of those projects, I was like, whoa, you know. So, a long-time fan here, man. So
you guys, are you familiar with the Woody Allen film Zelig? You know, where this guy just keeps popping up in the background everywhere, like there's all these
I know of it. I know.
There he is again. There's that guy. That's my career. You know?
Yeah. No, I don't think that's right, man.
I just imagine people at home going, honey, it's that guy again.
Yeah.
He won't stop popping up on my television. Yeah.
Anthony, I can back that up. I was watching Suits the other day, and I just nudged my wife in it. Truman-Lodge, he's right there.
That's right. Working with, unbeknownst to me, working with future royalty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. There we go.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few of those names. Was it your first film, Gary Marshall's Nothing in Common, that you were with Tom Hanks?
Yes, it was. My first feature film, very exciting. It was a bunch of Chicago actors, mostly improvisers. And because much of that film was improvised, all the stuff in the advertising agency. And, you know, I kind of BS'd my way into this movie. I confessed it to Gary like 25, 30 years later when I was working with him on a play, the last play he directed. And I was like just out of college, and I got this audition for him in Chicago. And most of the people he had cast already were like the top improvisers from Second City, the top improv group in the States. And I had an initial audition, and I did something funny with the material I was given, I guess. And he said, so, because Gary had a very interesting way of talking. He goes, so do you do the improv? You know, the improv where you just make it up. And I said, yes, actually, I have my own improv group up in Milwaukee. We're called Razor's Edge because it's completely based on audience suggestions, nothing prepared. And that was completely bullshit. I just made it up. And he says to me, good, because we're having a callback on Sunday. It's going to be you and the top members of Second City for 2 hours of improv. And I went home and I drove up the I-94, this freeway up to my little town where I was from in Illinois, because I was still living at home. And I went home and my parents, my little parents from Holland, were going, so how did it go? And I just kind of waved at him, and I went up to my room and I started crying because I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, because I'd never done improv in my life. So what I did was I just thought about what are the scenarios they're probably going to be. I thought it would be about the advertising world. So I thought it's probably going to be like wacky, pitches for an ad campaign and stuff like that. So I wrote a bunch of stuff and a bunch of jokes, and it turned out to be exactly that. So I would just plug things in that I'd written, and it looked like I was making it up on the fly, and it worked like a charm, and it got me into my first movie. Wow. That's a true story.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I was about to say I was an aficionado of Razor's Edge for a moment there. But,
Oh, yeah.
Swear by it.
Yeah, we killed just like the razors in the caps on Peaky Blinders.
Well, you're clearly a comedian, Anthony. And like I said, you've worked with Leslie Nielsen and Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld, obviously in the Jimmy on that. Yeah. I mean, what Seinfeld, an experience that must have been.
Oh, that was lovely. I just did a whole podcast on Seinfeld. That was a thing unto itself. And, it's a rare experience. There's 3 experiences I've had where this is the case. One is License to Kill. The second is Cheers. And the third is Seinfeld, where you get to be on something that you were already a huge fan of. I was a huge Bond fan growing up. So when I got to be in a Bond movie, I was just like, I don't believe it. It's happening, and it was the same thing with Cheers. I was a huge fan of Cheers. And when I was on that set, I felt like it was an out-of-body experience. And the same thing with Seinfeld. It was just like, here I am. I'm playing with these guys, and they're the funniest people around. So yeah, it was great.
And how much of that is improvised with Seinfeld? I know it is a bit more on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
It's very little. But Larry David, it's not surprising now because of Curb Your Enthusiasm being almost all improvised. But it was strange in that day, because usually writers and writer-producer showrunners like Larry David are usually very controlling about the dialogue. They want the joke just as written and all this kind of thing. And there's a reason for that, because there's kind of precision to comedy. But Larry was the kind of guy also, I could tell very early on, that he just wanted something funny, and he didn't care where it came from. And I'd learned by then that the best thing to do is to pitch or suggest a line or try a line during rehearsal while you're working it out during the day. And then there's always a run through at the end of the day with these multi-camera sitcoms. And then if they like it, they say, try it at the run through, see if you can make the writers laugh, and if that happens, then it ends up in the show. So there's a few lines in there like, Jimmy's going into shock, and Jimmy loves the velvet fog, and all this kind of stuff. Those were lines that I came up with. So that was fun.
Wow. Oh, super. Awesome. Such a great character to play as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so, I always find that menacing psychotics are funny. So,
the dark secret behind Jimmy,
yeah, right.
But you mentioned,
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, I'm guessing you find Franz Sanchez hilarious, then, don't you?
Oh yeah. Just a barrel of monkeys, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll get on to it. My word. It is still recording, Rob, just to absolutely double check.
100%. I've only checked every 25 seconds.
Good lad. Okay.
Because honestly, I can't miss this.
So yeah, Anthony, say obviously you were a Cheers fan, a Seinfeld fan, and you were a Bond fan growing up.
Yes.
So growing up, who was your favourite Bond and your favourite Bond films?
Well, I'm of that age where the one that I was most cognizant of was, when I was a kind of just a kid, just old enough to kind of go see a Bond film, which is more in the 70s. So my initial reference was Roger Moore. Then I started to go back and find Sean Connery, and then, saw that contrast, and prior to doing the film, I went back and, this was the 80s. So like went to a Blockbuster or whatever, and got all the movies and rewatched them all, and really discovered movies that are among my favorites now, like Thunderball, my top 5 is probably, because I'm a big Daniel Craig fan. I would probably put him at the top of my list for Bonds. But the thing is, I don't think you have a Daniel Craig or that approach to Bond without Tim Dalton.
Yes.
Because Tim Dalton was the guy, and I talked to Tim about this. He really just went back to the books. He tried to push the movies to the side, went back to the books, and he discovered that darker version of Bond, which makes total sense. I mean, because the guy, he has a license to kill, pardon, the title, but
it's the truth.
A person who's seeking that out on some level has issues, and he found that part of him. And I think that was like a really fresh approach to Bond, and he made him badass because of that. But probably my top 5, I think we had a little exchange on this on Twitter. I don't know if it was you or somebody else, but my top 5 movies are probably Casino Royale, Skyfall, License to Kill, Thunderball, and The Spy Who Loved Me, which is my favorite Roger Moore. Yeah.
That's an amazing mix there. You've got 3 different Bonds as well. No, 4 different Bond actors, superb.
It's so strange. I just read Living Daylights, Fleming's Living Daylight. Sorry, not Living Daylight. Sorry,
the novelisation.
Live and Let Die. Yeah, the original Live and Let Die. Yeah. Which, thank you, John. Sorry, I was getting there. I ran the house to get there.
That would have been a novelization, right? That was.
John Gardner did the License to Kill novelization of thingy. But the what struck me was how close Tim was to that source material. In the coldness, but also the warmth, if that's even a possible thing to say. He managed to embody that duplicity of character, which James Bond has to have.
Yeah, and the one thing I always wish that Tim had brought to the role, having gotten to know him a little bit, is that the guy's very funny. Really? And I wish he had brought a little bit more of a kind of gallows humor to it. But I think he kind of thought, no, I'm going in this direction. I'm going for a kind more of a realism here, which is good because License to Kill is probably the most realistic and of the moment Bond film. I mean, you've got a bad guy that's basically based on Pablo Escobar, and then just a few kind of Bondinizing elements, like this dissolving of the cocaine into tanker trucks and then being able to extract it back out and that kind of thing. But it's probably more plausible than other Bond films.
Could I ask, were you aware while you were making this Bond film, just one, how hard it was, because it was a step away from the usual Bond. Where Bond had got to. I mean, we're all, documented fans of the likes of Octopussy, View to a Kill, and Living Daylights, which led up to License to Kill. But I mean, this was a real step away. I mean, I've loved it my whole life. But were you aware that it was something that was going in a slightly different direction?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'm not sure how different it was. I think I had a sense that it was more reality based because it was so kind of ripped from the headlines. My character, for example, insider trading on Wall Street was a big deal at that time. Ivan Boesky and all these characters that later inspired Michael Douglas's character of Gordon Gekko on Wall Street. This was all kind of brimming to the surface, and the character of Truman-Lodge was sort of ahead of the curve about putting a person like that in a movie. An interesting point that you guys may not know is that they had a whole backstory to Truman-Lodge that ended up getting lopped out. Very briefly referred to as he's kind of getting off a plane on a tarmac or whatever when he's first introduced. There was a line where he says, yeah, you know, he got run out of the United States for insider trading.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not sure how much of that made it into the film, but that was the backstory. And I was at a point in my development as an actor where I would research anything I get my hands on, because my acting teacher, Natalia Nogalich, who studied under Stella Adler, was very big on creating a backstory for your character, writing these, I would write like 30, 40, 50 page bios, you know, a character biography, you know, and because it said that, it said, you know, yeah, he was kicked out of the United States for insider trading, and then he somehow hooked up with this Colombian drug lord as his sort of CFO, you know, chief financial officer. And so I was cast a couple months in advance of doing it. So I took that information and I found friends to get me on the floor of the exchange, the stock exchange in LA. And then also I flew to New York and stayed at a friend's apartment and got onto the floor of the New York Stock Exchange just to kind of soak up the world. Wow, and because I found out how crazy it is. You know, you'd think that world, because of, you know, all the money involved and all the analytics involved, that it would be very cerebral and very calculating. When I got there and really observed these people and talked to them, it's almost all emotional. That the financial markets in the world are almost all based on guts and things like fear and greed, and that was interesting. And so it kind of gave me a little something for the guy as being kind of a super intense kind of live wire of a guy that when things aren't going his way, he blows a gasket. Yeah, you know. And but yeah, that's what led into that. And, you know, I should tell you a little bit about auditioning for it too.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please. That's interesting. Jane Jenkins and Janet Hershenson, major casting directors who I had known from something. And they later were the ones who put me in Magnificent Seven also. They were casting the film stateside. And I went in. They didn't have a lot of material to read from the script. So they gave us sides, you know, a bit of material from a kind of mini series that was out called The Billionaire Boys Club, which was a true story about these corrupt, you know, young, entitled white boys who were doing something scandalous. I don't know what anymore. So I read this scene and I kind of found this kind of odd take on the guy, because it seemed kind of dry, the material. And I know, for example, they had a lot of people in reading for it, because I asked Jane if I could look at the tape, because I was not, in those days, you usually got into the room first with people to read for them. Now everything's kind of on videotape, and then maybe you meet people later, but then it was just on tape, and they were just going to send the tapes over to John Glenn. And so I read, and I asked if I could look at it quick, and she was queuing it up, and I saw that the person who had read before me was Billy Zane, who later became famous on Titanic. So they had a lot of like the up-and-comer actors coming in for that. But I read it, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. So they sent it over to John Glenn, and then I was to meet him. And what was beautiful about this is I didn't have to read again. He liked the reading. That was good enough for him. He just wanted to meet me. That's cool. To see if he was someone he could talk with and deal with and whatever. So I just had a meeting, sat and talked with him, and I wasn't quite sure what to say. And so I did, you know, it's sort of like almost like a dating technique where you flip the conversation back on the other person.
Yeah, very good.
You know, and so I before I knew it, I had him talking to me for about 15 minutes about his days in the Royal Air Force.
Wow.
You know, and I was like not saying anything. And I was like, okay. And so apparently, you know, I left. He was like, oh, I like him, you know. And so then he had me back in, and I kept wearing the same clothes that I was wearing from the first audition, same suit or whatever, because that was something I learned from an auditioning book. And then I came in, and then I again just met him and Barbara Broccoli, Michael Wilson, and Albert Broccoli, aka Cubby Broccoli, had a nice conversation with them. They decided that I was pleasant enough to hire.
That's terrifying, though. Just seeing those people.
Amazing.
But I didn't have to read from them again. That was the beauty of it. So because usually, with American productions, it's like read it again, and particularly like with sitcoms and stuff, it gets less funny every time you read it because everybody's heard it already. So it was actually a very pleasant process.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And was that in the US? Then?
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was in LA. All of it was right here.
And you filmed a lot of it in Mexico, didn't you, as well? I bet that was interesting.
I filmed all my stuff in Mexico. They filmed in Key West for a little bit, and I was out of that. And then the whole production moved over to Mexico, and then I was in all of that. And because it's, as you can tell from watching the film, I come in a little later in the movie, but then I'm kind of all through to the end, which was great. So I was down there for over a month, and maybe close to 2, I'm not sure. And it was an adventure. We were at Churubusco Studios in Mexico City. And then we were in the mountains in Toluca, Mexico, where they had the big, the whole operation going on. That's where that was filmed. And then we were in Acapulco, which is kind of where Sanchez's house was. And then we were in Mexicali, where all the tanker truck chase scenes were. Oh man! So it was a blast. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it was.
And I guess the long days, and does that mean there's any chance for partying and things like that going on?
I found time.
My man.
Come on.
No, I had a lot of fun because when you're not the main guy, you've got more time, to go water skiing in Acapulco, and stuff like that. I one time said to Tim Dalton, I was 25. I was kind of dumb, and I said to him, it was like a Saturday night, and sometimes we'd have a dinner on Saturday night because it was a 6-day shoot week, and then just Sunday off. So Saturday night, sometimes, people would gather for a dinner. And I said to him, so, kind of like, what have you been up to this week? And he looked at me and kind of went, I've been working. And I'm like, oh, that's right. You're James Bond in the James Bond movie. I've been drinking, so, yeah, he was a busy boy, much more than I.
What, sorry.
No, go, Rob, go for it.
Well, I was going to ask about John Glenn. I feel he's really underappreciated in the world of cinema, really, actually, his contribution, and what recollections you have of working with him, and what it was like.
He's sort of stylistically, in terms of his set presence, kind of sort of typical of a lot of guys that I've known who come from his background, which is directing second unit. Mm-hmm. They set things up, and then they hit the first domino, and let it go, because that's, when you're used to directing action, that's how that works. There's not a lot of sitting around and contemplating one's navel about character motivation and that sort of thing. I mean, he kind of left the actors alone, which I love, because it allowed me to kind of do things like, my last line before I get shot, all that was on the page was another $80 million write-off. Okay, and I just went, brilliant, well done, Franz, another $80 million write-off. And I did everything but tell him to blow me and because I was doing it for Sanchez. I wanted him to, look more justified in shooting me 12 times across the chest.
Oh, you did.
Oh, and that, yeah.
You had it coming, I'm afraid.
That's another funny story. As I'm getting squibbed up for that, because I had 5-6 squibs across my chest as he strafes me with a machine gun. It was a British crew, all very polite and everything on the set, very nice, always refer to you as sir and all this kind of thing, which I wasn't used to from American crews. And all very buttoned down and everything, until you're going out with them later that night, which I spent a lot of my time doing. And then
did they know how to have a little refreshment?
Yes, I did. And if I hadn't, I would have learned. But this guy, he's running these squibs up my chest, and I'm getting a little nervous. I'd never had adhesive explosives attached to my body before, and he's kind of down on his knees, like in front of me, like, stringing this thing along my chest. And I look down at him, I go, this is not going to burn me, is it? And he looks up and he goes, well, no, it shouldn't. No, sir. and just keeps working. And I was like, okay, you've filled me with confidence now. And so,
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And when I got shot, I go flying back, and I'm not that far from an actual tanker truck that's in blazes.
Yeah.
And it's so hot that I was like laying there waiting for them to yell cut, because my one arm was kind of behind me like this. And it was just that much closer to the tanker truck. And it felt like it was on fire, because that's how much heat was coming off that thing. And that is, to me, is the exciting thing about James Bond movies, is the amount of practical stunts in our age of CGI and everything. Yes. There's nothing like a practical stunt for excitement. And all that stuff was practical. When you see a truck, flying off a road and narrowly missing a plane, that's what you just saw.
So the shot lasted a bit longer because Sanchez was obviously stood on your foot, wasn't he, to get the breach?
He stood on my arm, I believe. I don't think that was in the script, but hey, I was improvising. Those lovely shoes.
Yeah, right. Those lovely brogues that right. I don't know what they were. They were delicious.
So what was he like, Robert Darby? Sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it. Let's ask that question first.
We want to know about
Robertson, excellent actor, and brought a lot to that role. I can see why he's a fan favorite. He's also a great singer. He's classically trained. He would sing little bits of opera on the set, and we would, kind of talk about vocal exercises and stuff like that. I didn't hang out with him much, though. I mostly hung out with the crew, as I mentioned, and a woman named Sita White, who was in the publicity department, who sadly is no longer with us. A little bit with Benicio del Toro, and I got to be really good friends with Kerry Tagawa, who I knew for quite a while after that. I haven't seen him in a bit, but great actor. And you should see The Man in the High Castle if you haven't seen that. He's great in that. Yeah.
Mate, Anthony, I'm a massive fan of Kerry Tagawa. His career is just so long and storied and varied as well. And I didn't know whether you were going to mention him tonight, but because I don't know, you share one scene together in the movie as well, don't you? I think
I don't even remember. I just liked his vibe. He's got this really cool, chill vibe to him, that he's like this kind of Zen master in real life. He really is like that. Wow. And what's interesting, because he's not from Japan. I think he was raised in Oklahoma. Okay,
seriously, I didn't know that at all.
He's just got it's almost like a chill kind of cowboy vibe that he's got. But he knows a lot about Japanese culture. I think he's fluent Japanese speaker, but not from there. And just a very interesting guy, interesting vibe, funny, and an interesting kind of, particularly in those days. This is 30 years ago, because I grew up studying martial arts. And I knew a lot of Koreans, for example. And when I was growing up, they were all rather small, And now I train in Koreatown doing kickboxing, and a lot of these kids, like I say, kids, maybe 25 or whatever. They're routinely over 6 feet. So, things change, diets change and stuff like that, and people get bigger and stuff. But he was kind of a big dude, for an Asian guy, back in the 80s. And he just kind of physiqued out, you know what I mean? So he's an interesting looking guy. He's got this great face, doesn't he?
Oh, I talked about it recently. Really love the guy. Just really good dude. That's awesome to hear that.
He'd make a great main villain, I think, in a Bond film.
Oh, sure he would.
Yeah.
Sure he would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just going back to the sort of scenes you have on the phone when he's sort of arranging with Wayne Newton, all those stuff. We thought you can clearly you've put some thought into your character with the whole messing about with this ball or whatever it is you've got.
Yeah. It's funny. Like later, when I did The Magnificent Seven, I played a guy who was a Southern riverboat gambler, and I actually trained with an actor who's also a magician a British guy by the name of Steve Valentine. Really good actor, really nice guy. But he used to work in those days at the Magic Castle, and he used to do a lot of up close sleight of hand. And so I learned a lot of manipulating cards with one hand and stuff like that. But at that time, I was just thinking about the character and thinking, he does a lot of just sort of thinking. He's just sort of sitting and thinking. How do you visualize that? So I was thinking about that, and I thought I used to watch a lot of old film noir movies, and there was always like a bit where some of these gangsters would have a quarter, and they would roll it, kind of roll it along the tops of their fingers, and you know, because I used to love Humphrey Bogart movies like The Maltese Falcon and stuff like that, and there was always some, you know, mug, some hooligan, some guy with a busted nose who was, you know, standing behind the capo, the main, you know, mobster, you know, rolling a quarter or a $50 like that. And I thought to, and I had gotten into this game called Smash Ball, which is like a beach game where you hit, it's like a paddle ball with these like fluorescent balls, you know, that me and my girlfriend used to go to the beach and play this game. And I had one of these yellow smash balls. It was like like a spongy little ball. And I thought, what if he had this thing in his hand all the time and it was sort of like a stress reliever? And then I just started twiddling it between my fingers like that and rolling it back and forth like that. And I thought, yeah, I like this. So I kept it. And again, John Glenn didn't stop me.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anthony. Can I just ask about this? Because this is an amazing thing. Because what I think one of the amazing things about License to Kill is the amount of henchmen there are.
Yeah.
Who all seem to have their own characteristics. They don't get lost. There's so many memorable ones, and I think you've probably answered the question already. Because I was going to ask, was it John Glenn's direction? But I think it probably just sounds really more like he just let you get on with it, and you just had a great pool of actors on that show. Would that be right in saying that?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. You know, and I think there's, you know, it's a lesson to be learned by directors that if you trust your casting and lean on it and let your actors, you know, take care of their department, and their department is their character.
Yeah.
It's just when it's not working in the overall context of the story that you need to stand in and say, hey, take it this way or that way. But not enough directors just let the actor go until it becomes a problem, because sometimes you can start to think, God, I wasn't expecting him to do that. And then all of a sudden you can go, oh, but I like it. You know, I'll never forget one time on that show Inside the Actor's Studio with James Lipton, he asked Anthony Hopkins, you know, one of my favorites of all time, he asked him, what do you want from a director? And Hopkins said, to be left alone.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's great. And, you know, I might've been younger when I saw that and kind of felt like, oh boy, that's, you know, I would never say that, but I would say it now because I've been acting for 35 years. And I sometimes would just like to be left alone and be allowed to do my thing. And you can concentrate on where you're going to put the camera, you know, and, but yeah, you know, John Glenn let us do stuff like that, which was great.
A lot of the actors, like Tim, especially, like you're trained as well, aren't you? You've grown up properly trained actor, and he's classically trained actor. Obviously, there's a lot of respect for people like that, and he would normally be like, "Well, I'm a director, you're an actor. Get on with it."
Well, yeah, you know, I think, you know, Tim was pretty, you know, low key on a set, and I don't think he had any problems with John Glenn, certainly. But yeah, talk about classically trained and all that. And speaking of Anthony Hopkins, they both were, their first movie was the same movie. They were both in The Lion in Winter. It was their first movie. Yeah. And he was, I think, Prince Philip, the sort of Dauphin, the prince from France, I think. And I think Tim was maybe 20 or something, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and
he's been around for so long.
Yeah. And so yeah, there was a lot of really good actors who knew what they were doing on that one. Yeah.
Was there a moment during all this whole period of shooting, where you thought, "Oh my God, this is real. This is," and the scale of what you were involved with hit you at all? Was that before, during, after, maybe?
Well,
is it right now talking to us?
well, a couple of things. I mean, in a couple of stories I want to tell you too.
Good.
I would say it was a couple of things where it hit me that this is real. One was, you know, when they were blowing up the tanker trucks. Oh. And we were out there in the desert in Mexicali. I mean, the size of these explosions, I just thought, wow, I am on a James Bond movie. Another thing was, I flew to the premiere in London.
Oh, really?
And Princess Diana and Prince Charles were there.
It's just incredible.
They were sitting a few rows behind me. I'm from a little town in northern Illinois, and I'm watching this thing, just hoping I don't suck. And it gets to the end credits, and Patti LaBelle's singing "If You'd Ask Me To," and I could have burst into tears because I wasn't embarrassed from me in front of royalty. You know, literally in front of royalty. And it was just like, wow, I'm here. And I wasn't in the receiving line with, you know, Charles and Diana. Sadly, I can't say that I actually met them, but I was like a couple feet, I was in a line behind that line, a couple feet behind them. So I got to like eavesdrop on the little conversations they were having. And I got to see that being a royal is kind of an odd sort of job, you know, where you have to kind of meet all these people at all these events and have something to say and find a way to engage them and then break away from them without being rude. And Prince Charles was really good at it. He had this, he would have some guy sort of whispering in his ear, you know, saying, sir, this is the head of the, this is the head of the, this is the head stunt coordinator. And then Charles would kind of go, so I understand you're the stunt coordinator.
Wow, he's heard of me, you know.
He's obviously a massive Bond fan, you know.
I don't suppose you go falling out of planes and all that sort of business. No one's setting you on fire, you know. And no, sir, I've got people for that. And you know, in a little chat, he goes, oh, hopefully one won't call in sick for work. And you know, and then the guy would laugh a little bit, and then as he's laughing, Charles would move to the next person. He did that like, and I was like, that's like a magic trick, you know. Diana was sort of next to him, kind of true to her reputation, sort of shyly, kind of looking at people, not saying much, but clearly. She felt to me like I felt like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm at a Bond premiere, you know.
This is going to make me sound very, very weird, but I actually watched that red carpet today. You know, right? Yeah, I did. It's on YouTube, so I watched it today. So yeah, so I could very much picture what you're talking about there, Anthony.
So that was fantastic. And the other story I have to tell you guys is, I didn't have a whole lot of time to really get to know Tim Dalton on the film, and I was thinking to myself, should I tell this story? It's I don't know, but it's so damn funny, I have to tell you. So I didn't really get a chance to know him all that well during the movie because, you know, he was working, and so but we got wrapped on the same day, okay, and so they put us on a plane very early in the morning. I think from Mexico City to LA, very early morning flight, rather short flight. But I got, for at least a couple of hours, maybe 2-3 hours, I got to sit on a plane in first class next to Tim Dalton.
Oh.
Okay. And I finally got a chance to kind of talk to him about things because I'd been observing him, but I hadn't talked to him a whole lot. And I was 25 at the time. I think he was 42. And which seemed incredibly ancient to me, you know, just how's this old man doing all this stuff? Because he was very handy, did a lot of his own stunts, pretty much all of his own fighting, was very kind of agile and athletic, you know? And I was kind of impressed by that because I've always been a gym rat and I was a martial artist and I was just watching how he moved and I was impressed. And I'd never seen him do anything more strenuous to warm up other than perhaps light a cigarette, you know, because we were all smoking in those days because the Surgeon General's warning had only been out for about 25 years. And news traveled very slowly in the 20th century. So, but anyway, so I was very curious about that. And so I said to him, I said to him, Tim, you're very handy with the stunts. Do you have, do you have some kind of a workout regimen? And he looked off very thoughtfully and said, well, I used to fuck a lot. But even that's dwindled off a bit, so no, I suppose I don't. And I just thought that was one of the funniest things anyone had ever said to me. And he said it so, in such British fashion, it was so dry. Almost wistful. Like it almost brought a tear to his eye.
Those days of yore.
Those days of yore, exactly. And so the plane lands. We both go to baggage claim. I step out on the curb, and he comes out on the curb, and he sees me kind of looking like trying to hail a taxi. And he says to me, did they not send you a car? And I said, well, no. I said, you're James Bond in the James Bond movie. I'm just like, me. And he goes, oh, and this big white stretch limo pulls up. He goes, come on. So he invites me into his limo, says, where you live? And I lived off the Sunset Strip, not far from where he was. And he goes, come on, we'll take you home. Which, right there. Okay, I just want to share that story because what a great guy, right?
Yeah.
Right? So we're sitting there, we're in there, and he starts looking around, and he finds this nice bottle of scotch that they had in the back of the limo, pours us each about a neat 2 fingers, and he picks up a glass and goes, well, here's a license to kill. Clink. Oh. And that's how the movie ended for me. And then he brought me to my apartment building, waves me off, and there he goes. And that was the end of the movie for me. How's that?
So Anthony,
that is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
I'm done. I'm out.
Timothy Dalton. Anthony, Timothy Dalton is my absolute favorite James Bond.
Yeah.
And I never thought I could love him anymore. So thank you.
You know.
Thank you.
I wanted to share that story because, first of all, it shows 2 things. He's funny, number 1, and number 2, a good guy, nice man.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool, man.
It's so good that you're actually being asked to go in a car and you don't get shot like you do in the film.
Yeah. At that point, it was refreshing. Yes.
I feel like I've asked too many questions, but I wonder whether I could ask one more, if that's okay. About Bond fandom since then and how the Bond world has treated you since then, both in an official sense and just fans like we are. You're obviously part of a huge legacy. I mean, for myself, Anthony, the legacy of License to Kill is I was married in 2013 and I was in prolonged discussions with Liverpool's meteorological office as to whether I could jump out of the sky to my wedding like Bond and Felix. So, and they turned us down. So I was going to try and do it with my brother, who was my best friend. And I'm sure
your wife was greatly relieved. Yeah.
She found out quite late in proceedings, but but so, I mean, this is the kind of fandom you inspired with what you've done with this movie. How has that corresponded to everything that's happened since?
Well, you know, what's funny about my career and my life, you'd think that this would be a common experience for me. I think this is the first podcast I've ever done.
You're one of us now, Anthony. You're one of us.
Yeah. Related specifically to License to Kill. I mean, it's come up in other podcasts I've done, but it's the first Bond one. I've never been to a Bond convention. I was invited to one once, and then it kind of fell through. The only thing I've ever done is there's a playing card fan autograph card company, you know, that does them, and you know, so I sign cards, and you know, I get you know, a couple of bucks per card that I sign or whatever. I've done that a couple times. I'm not doing it anymore because have you ever signed your own name like 1,000 times? I thought I was going to walk into a donut shop with an automatic weapon, you know, screaming, I'm not what Daddy wanted. You know, I thought
this wasn't what he came into acting for.
That's an old Sam Kinison joke, by the way. But no, I thought my head was going to explode. But the funny thing is, it's not been that much. It's not been that much interaction. So this is fun.
Well, we want to get License to Kill properly on the menu again. My word.
Well, and I appreciate that, guys, because it was very sad for us, for me personally, that the movie didn't do bigger box office and all this kind of stuff. It really was not even a career boost for me, which was really disappointing because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in a Bond film. What do you want, folks? And but Hollywood is like that. It's like who's racking up the big numbers this week? And it was a crazy summer because right before we came out, you had the first Batman movie with Michael Keaton and Lethal Weapon 2, which was huge. Came out right before us, you know. I mean, my understanding is I think we were the number 1 film in Denmark, but you know that and 450 will get you a latte in Los Angeles, you know. So it's really nice that you guys are sort of burnishing the legacy of this film because I think it's well deserved because I've honestly felt it's one of the better Bond movies ever made.
Oh, 100%.
It's legitimately in my top 5. And the fact that you guys are putting it at the top of the list is much appreciated.
Anthony, we're not just saying this. We genuinely mean it. We have absolutely loved this film from the first time we've talked about it. And you are very much a big part of that reason. And
Thank you very much.
It's huge.
So,
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's like a life affirming to us in a way to have this conversation. Yeah. So, you know, it really is. I think one of the problems that License to Kill had was the audience perhaps wasn't ready for it. You know, we saw what happened 20 years later with Casino Royale. They were perhaps ready to, you know, was License to Kill ahead of its time?
It was ahead of its time, you know, but the thing is, the script, and I think Michael Wilson co-wrote that one.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a conscious choice. It's just like, we're going to make this real here, you know? And I think that's why you guys like it so much. It was ahead of its time in a sense, but in terms of screenwriting, it was right on the moment. It was very of its time. All the themes, you know, were very of its time. So, but sometimes fans of a genre get habituated to a certain kind of a film, and it takes them a while to catch up with it. And I think that's what has happened with this film.
It happened with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It took 30, 40 years for people to really appreciate it. And I think, I mean, it's 30 years since License to Kill now. And it was in the top 10 of that recent poll on Twitter. So it's clearly doing something right, isn't it?
Yeah. And, you know, interesting showbiz story. George Lazenby was sitting waiting in a Hong Kong bar in July 20th, 1973. He was supposed to have a big meeting for a film with the star of the film, but the star had just suddenly passed away while taking a nap, and the star of the film was Bruce Lee.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah. He had gotten together with Raymond. I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. There's a great biography of him called Bruce Lee, A Life by Matthew Polly. Amazing book. But on the day he died, Raymond Chow and George Lazenby were supposed to have a meeting about setting up a film with Bruce Lee.
No way.
1973, yeah. Yep.
Incredible. Just totally superfluous to an actual Bond chat. But what about Brandon Lee? Where do you start? You know, how do you feel about Brandon? I'm a huge Brandon Lee fan.
You know, it was, you know, if you ever saw the movie Dragon, you know, which was released after Brandon died, but filmed and edited before he died. And in that space between making a film and releasing it, Brandon Lee died. And so when you watch that film and realize that, and you see all this stuff about, and a lot of it was sort of embellishment or whatever in a way of, you know, pulling the story along, but to have that storyline in there of Bruce Lee feeling like he had this curse hanging over him, and there was this some kind of demonic energy that was menacing him and his son. He was trying to protect his son.
It's crazy.
When I saw that movie, the chills I got were unbelievable, you know, because
I can imagine.
It was, I remember going to see The Crow. I was doing the George Carlin show at that time. And, and it was produced by Sam Simon, who was one of the creators of The Simpsons. And Sam was he just passed away not long ago from cancer. And Sam was very depressed about some stuff. And me and my, you know, girlfriend at the time went and picked him up and took him to a movie. So we took him to see The Crow. So I saw The Crow.
Good choice.
The Crow with a very depressed Sam Simon. You know?
I mean, to tie it neatly back round to James Bond, a huge fan of obviously Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee being in Showdown in Little Tokyo, where the head villain was Cary Tagawa. So
right.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that movie as well, man.
That's where we were going all along.
All along. This was a plant, Anthony.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
You're a chess player.
And I want that on my tombstone now, please.
Yes.
That's okay. Yes.
Oh, great stuff, Anthony. Thank you very much for coming on this podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a blast.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Long live the James Bond franchise, and long live License to Kill. And Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson. I'd love to do another one. Just you know.
Oh yes.
You know, these guys have my information.
You know, did you hear that, guys? We've got Anthony Starke.
That's right. No one cares.
We care. We
guys here who really do.
Big up.
All right, guys. Have a great day.